Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first video episode of Sips and Cents. We have a very special guest joining us. Her name is Ronit Rogozinski, and she has been in the financial planning world for almost 40 years. She is a huge inspiration to me, and I'm so excited for all of you to hear what she has to say. Also, yes, this intro was recorded on an entirely different day because in true first-timer fashion, I accidentally deleted my whole intro video. Anyway, let's roll the tape. What keeps your passion brewing in helping women with their finances, even after an impressive 30 years?
So the moment I'm sitting across from someone and that look in their eye comes forward of, I can actually do this, or I get it, that always reignites my excitement about why I do what I do. You're right. I have been in the industry now for almost 40 years soon. As a financial advisor for the last 34 years.
That's amazing.
Every time that split second of a spark lights up in somebody's eye, and I know that I have made a positive impact on their life and possibly on their family's life, just keeps me going. Just absolutely keeps me going.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that feeling carries you through, hoping to help future clients and get that aha moment for them. It's really cool because I think I experienced that for the first time with one of my friends, which completely opened me up to this whole profession. And I hope to have the same experience that you just mentioned many, many times in my future. So especially with women.
You will.
So speaking of starting quite a few years ago, how would you say your relationship with money has changed from your 20s to now?
That's a very interesting question because obviously my knowledge of the functionality of money, what it is as a tool, what it is as a product, how it's managed, how it's invested, obviously has grown over the years. But I think for me, when I think back to my 20s versus now when I'm 59,
Yeah.
it still is something that I have a tremendous appreciation for because I understand that money affords you a certain lifestyle and it's something that you have to work for. Some people are lucky to inherit, to receive, to gift, but most of us have to work very hard to earn our income, our right, however you bring that in. So my appreciation or my respect for the work that goes to earn money has only increased over time. But the way that I view money now is more as a tool to afford me my lifestyle versus something that I'm going after, right? In my 20s, it was always about, okay, I want that, so I need to get that much more. Today, it's not so much about getting the stuff or getting, that next shiny object, but it really is about, can money afford me the lifestyle that I want to live? So I think there's a little bit of a difference there. I'm much calmer about earning income, because I have a profession and I have a business that I'm running. But again, the appreciation of money is really more what can it do for me versus what do I need to do to get more of it.
Right. Yeah. And I think like the mindset shift is huge from, someone who's hustling in their 20s and wants the next big thing versus completely shifting your priority and what it can provide for you and the lifestyle, like you mentioned. And I think that's something that we all, at the end of the day, are striving for. So you went from working at a huge bank to starting your own practice. That sounds so terrifying, but also so awesome at the same time. What was the transition like? Did you have like shit moments, especially when it came to, putting your money into something that you didn't know would return back to you favorably?
Yes, and yes. Not just fear, but like, what happened was I was at Citibank for 18 years as a given that this was really the only outlet that I had. I knew that there were brokerage houses and I knew that there were other banks, but I didn't really see the need to leave the bank that I was with. And then one day we had our monthly meeting and I kept seeing these guys that had been there just as long as me weren't there anymore. So I asked one of my friends, one of my colleagues, where did this one go? And where did that one go? They said, oh, they went independent. And I said, what does that mean, independent? And so when I looked into this concept of being independent and realized that I could actually own and run my own practice, I just couldn't start it fast enough because I had reached a point in my life, both personally and professionally, where being in that structured bank program just didn't suit me as a person. And I didn't really know it at the time, but the idea that I could go out and be on my own was so attractive that I actually took a whole year to go out and interview a whole bunch of independent advisors, understood what the process would look like, and then decided one day I was just going to cut my strings and go. Because if I'm not going to do it now, there's always going to be an excuse to postpone it. So when I finally took the leap and went out on my own, I would say honestly that for the first couple of weeks, I was waking up at night, cold sweat, heart palpitations, absolute, what in the world did I do and why? And then when that first client said to me, "Oh, I'd love to work with you." And I kind of looked around and I said, "I have a business," right? One client, I have a business. I was like, okay, everything that I had learned for the last, 18 years has
Mhm.
led me to this point. And so what do I do with it? How do I build it? How do I develop it? And from that point on, it was just keep going, just keep going, just keep going. But yeah, it was absolutely terrifying to make that transition. And I will say to you that there was that aha moment of realizing that I owned the business when the first time I ran out of toner in my printer, right?
Mhm.
Ran out of toner and I'm thinking, "Oh, I wonder who I called to get a toner." And then I
Someone else
remember,
will take care of it.
yeah, right? And then I'm looking around going, there is no mothership. You're it. They called a colleague of mine and said that to her. And she said, "Guess what, Roni? You have to go to the store and you have to pick it up. And not only that, you have to put it into the printer." And I said, "Okay, I own a business. I
Yep.
own a business."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that I'm sure was such a like crazy, amazing feeling
Awesome.
to have,
Awesome.
after working um, in an environment where you weren't in control and now you get to be that person. And piggybacking off of that, what would you say to women specifically who, you know, are entering that transition period where they want to go off on their own and that they've, possibly worked for a company for a very long time, kind of like you, and they're nervous. Can you think back to your past self and what would have been helpful for you to hear in that moment?
Well, for me, even now, I would say to people, because I do work with a lot of women who are doing exactly that. They have lived a certain life and something has changed, whether it's
Yeah.
divorce, the death of a partner, the realization that they are on their own, whatever that situation is, usually it's part of a change that they're going through. And what I did back then and what I would continue to say to somebody now and ongoing, if this is something you want to do, going from working for one entity to another, from going from, being an employee to an employer to running your own business. I would say that usually, and from what I've seen in my practice, the nervousness or the inability to move forward usually stems from, how do I give up that paycheck? It's not even so much the mindset. It usually comes down to the money question. And I would encourage whoever is thinking of making some sort of a change, whether it's by choice or not, go back and start with where you are right now financially. And do you have enough of a cushion that if things don't work out, you can hold out for a certain period of time to really work at this new venture 100% of the time?
Yep.
I really think it comes down to money, because the business plan will be the business plan, right?
Hmm.
You can put together a business plan and say, you know what you're buying, you know what you're selling, you know the kind of business you want to have. That is something that you obviously need to work out. But then you need to take a step back and say, okay, if I'm actually going to make that change.
Yeah. And like you said, it always comes down to money, comes down to how much capital you are willing to risk and to lose, because as much as you want whatever sort of change in your lifestyle, you need the funds to get there. Speaking of huge transitions, you're a mom of four. How did becoming a mother change the way you view money?
Well, you realize it's not yours anymore because everything you're making goes towards raising a family. And yeah, we went from one to two to three to four. And, you want to send them to schools. You want to, obviously want to give them the best of everything. And I don't care if you're making 100,000,
Mhm.
50,000, 500,000, or 6 million. I mean, at the end of the day, you need to house your kids. You need to feed them. You need to, clothe them. What it did do is that it got me to be very creative with money in ways that I didn't actually think I knew or had ideas on. But you realize that you're not going to give your child everything and anything they want at all times. There's going to have to be a way to learn as a parent to say no. Otherwise, it doesn't work. You can't go into debt because your child in that moment wants some crazy gift because it's shiny, it's pretty. Guess what? You'll go into hock, and 5 minutes after they've opened it, they go, I'm done with it, and they move on. So I learned that I was in control of the money. My husband and I were in control of the money. We were the ones that were going to decide how we were going to manage our money. Our money was not our children's money,
Right.
right? My
Right.
children needed to learn the value of money. And ultimately, they can now manage their own finances as a result of that. But along the way, learning to say no, because I knew what was in the bank. I knew what was going in. I knew what was going out. What our shared priorities were between my husband and I, how we wanted to save, where we wanted to live, how we wanted to live. I think it actually made my kids incredibly independent, but also very creative. Because, when you say no, and this is something that they really wanted,
Hmm.
I would say to them, well, then go figure it out because I'm not paying for it. And next thing you know, they've got business ideas. They've got ways to earn income when they're 12 and 13 that if I would have just given them, oh yeah, no, here's $20, go buy it. It would have never generated that creativity in them. So I think that as parents, whether you have one child or four or many, teaching your kids not just so much what money is, but understanding that there is limited resources. And if you want something badly enough, it's got to be legal. It can't be stupid, right? You've got to be able to do it the right way. But I can't give it to you right now. You wanted this badly? Come back to me and tell me how we're going to figure out how to get it.
Hmm. Hmm. You touched on so many important points there, and the power of saying no, especially as a parent, I'm sure, where you want to just give your kid the world, is so valuable because, like you said, the creativity starts coming out. It's not I can't afford it from the child's perspective. It's how can I afford it? What can I do to get to where I want to go, where I can buy the toy that I want, or the piece of clothing that I want. And I think that is something that's so important as a parent to teach your child the value of money, especially at an early age when they're in their most formative years.
You know what I heard? I heard somebody say once, when you have a child, right? There's going to be moments of serious discomfort, but
Hmm.
it's going to lead to pure joy down the road versus joy in the moment and then hell down the road.
Being comfortable as a kid can be a two-way street. You can provide everything to your child and make them comfortable, and they'll never want to make themselves uncomfortable to grow. I think it is so important to push them out of their comfort zone when they know they're safe, when they know that there's a safe place to fall. So you mentioned a little bit that you became more creative with your money when you had children. Can you elaborate on that? Were you
Oh,
more
yeah.
aggressive with your money? In what ways did you become more creative?
Where I got very creative was one particular summer, all four of my kids were going to camp. And, you get the printout lists of this is what you need to send your child with. And so one of the things that screamed at me was I needed to get 10 pairs of shorts for each one of them. That's 40 pairs of shorts.
A lot of
Okay.
short.
That's a lot of shorts. And you
Yeah.
know that when you send your kid to sleepaway camp, whatever they're coming back with, you don't want in the house, right? So one of my daughters said to me, there's a sale going on in this new store. I know you're going to say no because she knew me by then, but I really want to show you what's there because, maybe for the summer we can get it on sale. So I said, great. We went to the mall. I've got all four kids with me. We walk into the store and instead of $50 a pair of shorts, it's $35 a pair of shorts. Now, I've got a boy and three girls. The size of their tushes are about, that big. For a piece of material, jeans that big, $35 each. I said, listen, let's be realistic. Let's do the math here. Do $35 times 10 for each of you times 4. There's no way I'm spending that kind of money on shorts that in 2 months are going to be too small on most of you. And you're either going to lose or destroy. I said, you know what? Let me show you how we can do this and not give it a second thought. Got them all in the car and drove them out to a local thrift store, the Salvation Army. Walked in and I said, here's your lists. Go find your clothes. And oh, by the way, look at this. And I picked up a pair of jeans and I said, the jeans in Salvation Army cost $1.99. So even if you don't want the jeans, we can always cut them. We can tie dye them. We can shred them. We can do all kinds of creative stuff, but it's $1.99. Do the math. Does this make more sense to you? And they all went, oh yeah. I said, God bless, you've got 10 minutes. I'll meet you back, right? So I'm standing in the middle of the store. They all go running. They all come back with the sweatshirts they needed to get, with the shorts they needed to get. 10, 15, or whatever it was. We made sure everything fit, took them home, washed them. I said to one of my girls, look, tie-dye them, bleach them, whatever. Long story short, they all went to camp. They all came back. They had a great time. But because we had tie-dyed some and bleached some, her girlfriends loved the look and paid her to make the
Wow.
same shorts for them. So I said, so here you go. The money is yours. You're not paying me back. I bought this because it was my responsibility to send you with clothes to camp. But the creativity that you guys were willing to try has now led to you making money. And that to me was something that, I mean, let's put it this way. I could pay it, but why would you want to? So my choice was I could give it to them or let's be creative. And the creativity led to more success.
Yeah, I think giving your kids the element of choice was so important for them. I'm sure that just that alone made them so happy to get to be in charge, to have control of some sort of the process.
But also the math was so blatantly
Right.
obvious. The child who's 9 or 11 has no perspective. What is $1,200 versus 120, right? $1,200 is a number. It doesn't mean anything. They don't know that somebody making minimum wage takes maybe 3 weeks to come up with that kind of money. It's a lot of work. So when you start to talk to them in those perspectives, suddenly it's not so bad, or it makes sense, because think of what else you can do with the money that you're not spending.
Yep.
Right? So yeah, it was a win-win.
Yeah, I think it was such a creative way to teach them the value of money without them even realizing. And because you're right, they don't understand the concept yet because they're not the ones working for their money. And it's huge. So we're going to get a little deeper here. What would you say is your biggest money fear? Like the thing that keeps you up at night financially, even as a certified financial planner?
I think the one fear that we all have, I mean, I know I have it, every client of mine has it, is running out of money. Is having something unexpected happens and you just don't have enough to continue your lifestyle as is. I think at every level that I've seen over my career, and even with myself, I'll look at my net worth today versus what it was 20 years ago or 30 years ago, even 10 years ago, and I'm still like, oh, if something happens, well, am I gonna be okay? And it's there. You have to embrace it. You have to understand that it's always gonna be there, and you
Yeah.
just move on. You just move
Yeah.
on.
And how do you reassure yourself when you get in that headspace of fearing that something unexpected may happen and shit hits the fan, right?
Shit happens in life. I mean, that's just the way it is, right? I always recommend have the basics done, have your will done, especially if you have children, if you have a spouse, if you have assets. You want to have a will written down. You may not need a trust, but you want to have some certain documents, powers of attorney, knowing that you have somebody in your family or your circle of friends that you can trust to take care of your final wishes in case you do have some tragic, occurrence that somebody else needs to step in and speak on your behalf. We always talk about, insurance. So I would never drive my car without having a car insurance. Having the basics done and knowing that I review them every 7, 8 years to make sure that they still make sense to my life today versus what it was maybe 10 years ago or 20 years ago is the basics. After that, I always look back and say, okay, where am I now? Right? Have I built my net worth? Have I brought my liabilities, that which I owe others, like a mortgage, like credit cards, like car loans, like personal loans? Have I managed to bring that down? Have I raised my assets? So having that checkup at least once a year, right? You should go to the doctor to get a checkup once a year. You should have your finances checked up once a year. And when I do that every year, it kind of gives me that, all right, we're going to be fine. And again, with all the planning in the world, stuff happens. But if you're engaged in the management of your own balance sheet, as I call it, then at least it can give you some reassurances that you're going to be fine.
Speaking of taking the steps necessary to keep yourself in a positive space financially, when you give advice to women and your clients, which from what I understand is primarily women, which is awesome. How do you make money conversations feel safe for them, especially in a male dominated industry? It can be very scary to approach these topics when it's not taught in schools. And some people are not given the privilege to be taught it at home. So how would you kind of approach that?
Well, it kind of goes back to why I named my firm Women and Wealth Solutions, right? To me, it was about trying to break down some of the apprehensions that women might have about talking about money. And so I was hoping that at least the name says, you know what, as a woman, I'm approachable. You can come talk to me. This is not going to be about or trying to make you feel, bad or judging you in any way, shape, or form. This is about coming up with solutions so that your wealth can be secured. It's all about making them understand that before we know, can you get to where you want to get, we need to understand where you are right now. So if somebody says to me, I just inherited this money, or I want to start saving, what do I do with my money? I always go, well, let's take a step back and let's first figure out where you are today. And so before, we say, do we go into the market? Do we not go into the market? Do we buy X? Do we buy Y? Where are you today? I don't know you, right? How can I give you advice if I can't put these dollars that you want to put to work within context of your life? And I think that when we start that conversation to say, wait a minute, before we're just going to throw that 10,000 or that 100,000 or that $1,000,000 into some sort of an investment portfolio, let's first see who you are on the balance sheet, which means we need to know what you own, what you owe, what you make, and we need to know what you spend. Because this money that you're telling me you want me to manage for you may not be available to all put into the market because you're sitting with a bill where you're paying some credit card company 23% a year. So let's first see what your financial picture looks like before we can actually go ahead and put together a plan. And I think that when somebody is willing to listen, some of that anxiety comes down, and at least we're having a conversation about the context of their life, not just trying to beat some index.
Absolutely. And I think my generation in particular are very much into instant gratification, right? So we skip those fundamental steps of taking a step back and seeing where you are right now.
I think it's a lot of us across many generations.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
money is something that has always been at the forefront of society. It's what runs the world. And in order to live this life, you need to have money. But there's no talk about how to get there. What are the steps to take? What is step one, right?
There's a perception that if I'm worth X, then I must be great. But if I'm worth Y, I'm a failure. I've learned to appreciate how people view money as a reflection on their own success or also their own self-worth. And what I'm trying constantly to remind my clients is where you are today doesn't necessarily mean is where you're going to end up. So if you're not happy with your finances today, if you're not happy with your career today, you need to do something about it. That doesn't mean that where you are today is going to be there for the rest of your life. So don't equate where you are today financially to somehow your self-worth or who you are as a person. It's a tool. It's a tool that affords you to live your life.
Yeah. Yeah. So on the other end of the coin, now that you mentioned that perspective, I'm wondering your thoughts on people who believe in manifestation, right? I'm going to be rich one day, and they just speak it out into the universe and expect it to happen. What would you say to people who kind of have that belief system? Do you think it takes work, or do you believe that, yeah, you can just manifest it and expect the universe to return that gift to you?
I honestly believe that you have to understand where you want to go. I believe that you need to say it out. I believe you need to plan it, but you have to work at it. Just saying it, just wanting it, just wishing for it is not enough. You have to put the plan in place, and then you have to work the plan. For those that say, oh, I'm just going to speak it out and the universe is going to gift it to me, I have a problem with that. You know what? Let's look at it from this perspective. If I turn on Google Maps and I punch an address in of where I want to go, what is the first thing that Google Maps asks you? Please turn on your location. I need to know where you are right now.
Right.
Right? So if I am here today and I want to be there tomorrow, I can say it. I want to be there tomorrow. But then I can't just sit here and wait to move. I need to physically get up and I need to do something to get me from here to there. So if I'm today a 23-year-old with my first paycheck and I want to say to myself, I want to be a multimillionaire by the time I'm 40, awesome, phenomenal. Go write it down, put it out on the wall. But then guess what? You need to go get a job tomorrow morning. If you're unemployed today, saying you want to be a multimillionaire in the next 24 years is fabulous, but you need to go get a job. You need to go have an income stream. How you then manage your income stream will depend on what you're willing to forego. And so I firmly believe that those that plan, but then work the plan, get the plan to come true. It's those of us that just kind of say, well, I should just be acknowledged, don't get anywhere. And I will say from a personal experience, this was one of my biggest lessons that I learned on my own flesh.
Yeah.
I thought that I'd be recognized for the great job that I did because someone's going to find out. You have to advocate for yourself. You have to go out there and do something. Just to sit here and expect for life to come and find you doesn't work.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you. I think manifestation is very powerful and having goals and dreams are amazing, but the work is
Absolutely.
90%.
Absolutely.
I love this quote that I heard somewhere. I think it's like 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration.
Perspiration.
And that speaks to this 1,000,000%. How do you help someone who is embarrassed about their financial situation or thinks they're too behind to start?
So step one for me is always about understanding where they are right now financially. And I physically, I say it to them. I'm not here to judge you. You're not here to judge yourself. We are just going to look at the facts. And in fact, I with a colleague of mine, I actually put together a learning program called Facing Facts. Let's face your facts. We're simply going to look at them as the facts. So what's your net worth? What's your cash flow look like? And when we are able to then put an action plan to get you to move forward, that's all that matters. So I say it, I mean it, and then I act on it. I get my clients to buy into the fact that we're done with judging, done with feelings taking over and emotions taking over. We're going to be factual, but we're also going to take action.
Yeah.
And when they actually start to do that, that's when they start to make change that it can really affect and improve their life going forward.
Yeah. And taking the first step to even show that they may need help or guidance is huge. Visualizing their position, maybe on paper, is already a million steps ahead of a lot of
Correct.
people. So, what would you say is your take on girl math or all these TikTok fads and concepts that are swirling around on social media right now?
At the end of the day, it comes down to four numbers. What do you own? What do you owe? What do you make? What do you spend? And when you know those numbers, I don't care how you spin it, how you look at it, how you calculate it, that's what it comes down to. So the whole idea that there's a girl's math is infuriating to me. Math is math. One of my girls came home with she failed a math test. I think she was in 5th grade or 6th grade or whatever. And she said, oh, my friends told me it's not a big deal. Girls don't need to be good in math. And before I could even respond, my husband went off on a tangent. What do you mean? And you need to be good at whatever it is that you try at. If the best that you can do is a B, fine. But you gave it your all. Failing, that means you didn't do any work. You didn't even try. So the whole idea that there's a girl's math, excuse me, no, no, we don't do that. Math is math. 1 + 1 = 2. I don't care how you spin it, how you look at it. When you spend a dime, if you didn't earn a dime, guess what? You can't spend the dime. So the idea that there's a girl's math out there, please, no.
Enough said. I think that girl math, the concept, is very
Demeaning.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't think it's something that we as girls and women should adopt. I think it's a funny concept, but that's all it is. It's a concept and should not be taken seriously by any means.
Correct.
Speaking of spending money, what do you actually spend money on that brings you joy? Like a guilty pleasure. So nothing serious. What is your guilt-free money?
So I'm going to tell you this story. I was driving a minivan for many, many years because, again, with 4 kids, carpools, pickups, drop-offs, and working, minivan was a phenomenal vehicle for me to use to just move everybody in a safe way. And I told this to my husband. I said, you know what? When we graduate our final child from college, I'm getting me a convertible, because that has been my dream car since the day that I discovered that convertibles existed. Walking around Seacliff one day on a power walk, I saw this thing drive by me, and I went to my husband, what was that thing? And he ended up finding it, and it turns out it was a slingshot. So when my youngest daughter called me up and said, guess what? I want to stay and do my master's. So it's going to be, instead of 3.5 years graduation, I'll be graduating in 4.5 years. I'm sorry about your whole convertible thing. I said, oh, don't even worry about it. You do your master's. I'm getting my slingshot now. I'm not waiting for you to graduate with your master's. So I went and bought myself a slingshot, which if nobody on this podcast right now knows what it is, go look it up. I bought it for me. It is my go-to drive. It just brings me such joy. It just makes me so happy. I went into the dealership. I said, I want that. Here's my credit card. When can I pick it up? And he looked at me and he went, what exactly? Who, what? Like he couldn't visualize me wanting this. I'd done my homework. I knew what it cost. I knew what it was. I walked in. I knew everything lined up. I bought it. It is one of the best gifts that I've given myself ever. So yeah, that's my thing.
And I'm sure that was the best feeling ever to go in guilt-free and get something that clearly
Correct.
brings you so much joy.
Correct.
And that's what money is meant for. It's meant,
Correct.
To be
It's a
spent
tool.
on that.
It's a tool. It's a tool. It's a tool. Absolutely.
As someone who does give, financial advice all day, do you ever feel pressured to be quote unquote perfect with money? Um,
Oh,
how do you give yourself permission to be human?
I've been in the financial advisor seat for 34 years. I remember the first market crash in 1999 was the tech bubble. The tech bubble burst. And it was the first time I'd ever seen the market go down. As a money manager, as somebody that was guiding people through investments, it was the first time that I experienced what a market crash looked like. I can't even begin to tell you how devastated I was for my clients. And I reached out to a lot of my colleagues, read a lot of books, read a lot of articles. And over the years, what I learned over and over again is that you cannot react to short-term turmoil when you have a long-term perspective. You've got to separate the noise from the activity. And when I finally understood the power of staying focused on the end game versus the day-to-day trading, it allowed me to be much calmer and really be that anchor for my clients. I tell my clients up front, I'm not a hedge fund. I'm not a day trader. I'm about the end game. I'm about getting you from here to 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And so right this minute, as hard as it is to see the market turn, we need to stay focused on that long-term goal. And that allowed me to provide value as I see it to my clients.
Being honest upfront about what you can provide and that you're human at the end of the day is so important to, people who may come in with so many different expectations. So kind of switching gears a little bit, how would you say that you and your partner handle money? Given that this is your profession, do you kind of take the brunt of the money management or do you split responsibilities?
That's a great question because I do it all. I pay the bills. I manage all the loans. I'm co-signer on all my kids, whatever. I'm pretty much the go-to person, but I did separate the tax filing. I said, I refuse to do anything with taxes. So he takes on everything and anything that has to do with taxes, filing, preparing, dealing with the accountant. That's his part of the equation. I want nothing to do with that. And so we have very specific roles, but what I do, and what I have said this to my clients and what I've said this to my husband many, many times, I make sure that he knows where the passwords are. I make sure he knows where the files are. He knows where the passwords are to get into the bank, to pay the bills. Everything, is joined. I mean, so obviously I've made sure that he's aware of every single thing that we have, where it is, what it is, why it is, how much it is. But on a day-to-day basis, I'm it.
Yeah.
I'm it.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's such a relief for him that you can handle all of this and he doesn't have to bat an eye because he knows it's well
But
done.
piggybacking on that, on what you just asked me, one of the things that I find with women going through a divorce or have lost their spouse or their partner, for the women that have never done anything other than just pay the bills that came in, they're not engaged in the investments. They're not engaged in the loan. Everything else past the expenses on the balance sheet. When they do need to know and they don't know, in this day and age, it's very hard to get that information. Because if you don't have access to the accounts through passwords, through second level identification, whatever it is almost impossible to get that information. So I encourage my married or my clients in relationships that if there is a money cohesion or some sort of an overlap where you do need to be engaged in the monies, even though you may not manage the investments, you may not manage the loans, you may not manage the payments, you have to find a way to have a conversation where both of you are in the know of what's available to the household. And I cannot tell you the amount of women that I've spoken to that are clueless, that have absolutely no idea what the household is worth. And
Yeah.
it's very dangerous.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think something that my mom has drilled into my head from a very, very young age was that money is freedom. And having control of your money is one of the most essential parts of living, especially as a woman and especially with a past where we didn't even get to open a bank account until 40, 50 years ago, whatever.
Correct. Judge Ginsburg fought for us to be able to apply for a checking account without a male cosigner.
It's so wild how new these concepts are for women and something that we absolutely need to take advantage of.
And realize there are places in the world where women can't have bank
Yep.
accounts.
Absolutely.
How fortunate are we?
So fortunate. So, speaking of our listeners who are mostly in their 20s and their 30s, many of them just starting their careers, what would you say is the biggest financial mistake you see people in our age range making that they probably don't even realize?
Not participating in their company's retirement plan. If they are in a business where there is a 401k or a 403b or a SEP or a simple IRA available for them to participate in, postponing that. If they're in a company where there is no retirement savings and they don't start up their own IRA or their Roth, they're missing one of the easiest ways to build wealth over time. That to me is one of the easiest no-brainer type of thing that you should be doing from the second you are eligible to participate. 10% of your income needs to be paid to you first because we don't pay ourselves first. We pay taxes. We pay the phone bill, the Wi-Fi bill, because God forbid we should go without Wi-Fi and a phone, but we don't pay ourselves. And the easiest, least, brain cell expenditure way to save is through your job's retirement plan. And if they don't have one, it is mandatory for you to go and open up your own IRA, which stands for individual retirement account, set it up for automatic debits from your own checking account on the first of the month. So before you pay anybody else, you should be paying yourself first. That is the biggest mistake I see everybody making, no matter what age they is. When you're putting away $100 starting when you're 20 or your first job for the next 30, 40 years, you can build up a huge nest egg for yourself. The less time, the more money you need to put away. So the earlier you can start saving for your own lifestyle down the road, the better off you are.
Time is everything. We can start investing in a Roth IRA at 25 and get a return of over $1 million, where, if you start investing in your 40s or 50s, you can maybe break $500,000. It's huge. Time is our biggest asset, and I'm so glad that you touched upon that.
Yeah.
I also loved that you brought up pay yourself first. We should always be our biggest line item on our balance sheet and prioritize ourselves and our future, and not, just the small materialistic things that we will forget about in a year. So I know we talked about this a little bit, but for someone truly starting their money management process, what is the first physical step? Would you say it's budgeting? Would you say it's getting a hold of all of their expenses in a certain way? Or
great question. And again, the fact that someone is actually willing and wants to sit down and have a financial conversation with herself is crucial. And yes, understanding where you're spending money is the first thing you need to do. So before you put together a budget, track for about a month or two every dime that you spend. Then take a look at it and start to ask yourself, okay, I spend X on Y. I spend this amount on that particular category. And start to ask yourself, should I be doing that? Or is that a reasonable dollar amount to be spending on whatever? What's really important for me? What is my must pays versus I could kind of put this off for a while or maybe tone this down a little bit. But you can only put together a budget when you understand what kind of life you want to lead and what that lifestyle is going to cost you. So if you can be crazy detail oriented, even if it is 100% against your nature, now what it does is it gives you a baseline that you can now work off of. So that to me will be the first thing you need to do.
That is, a great first step. Now that we've touched on some very, very important topics, I want to talk about some spicy subjects in finance and your opinion. So, my first question is, what is the wildest financial red flag that you've seen in a relationship?
Where one knows everything and the other one knows nothing.
Yeah. And would you say it's like apparent from day one when you meet a couple? Yeah.
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 Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it's just going to be turmoil. Yeah.
If the one that knows everything is somehow out of the picture, the other one is clueless. And that's when scams, that's when you can be taken advantage of. It is horrific. I've seen that
Yeah.
over and over and over again.
Yeah. And speaking of questionable relationships, is it gold digging if you specifically date people who are financially stable? Where would you draw the line? To say that it's kind of crossing that boundary.
I think if you're in your 20s and you're dating somebody who has no concept of money, that's an issue. I have absolutely no problem with saying, you know what, this may not be the right person for me. I don't expect people to say you need to show me your net worth statement before I will go on a date with you. But I think you can pick up on a vibe that says, wow, this person seems to be a little reckless with their money. It might not align with who I am or the things that are important to me. I don't think that's gold digging at all. I think it's very practical. It's very mature. I think it's very realistic.
All right. And what would you say is the biggest financial lie you constantly see women telling themselves?
It's too complicated. I'm not going to know it. I'm not going to understand. I'm not going to get it right. Hello, ladies. It's money. It's plus or minus. 1 plus 1 is always 2. 1 plus 1 does not become 3. Let's keep it basic. Let's keep it realistic. Let's keep it in context of your own life. And let's get all the noise out of the way. So the conversation or the perception that women have that they somehow aren't going to understand it. Listen, if we start talking about call options and stop loss gaps. I mean, these are all kinds of verbiage that you sit there and go, what does that mean? You're right to get concerned if you don't get it because most people don't get it. But basic money management where you can stay healthy and productive does not need to be that complicated. And it is not that complicated. So I try to kind of bring it down and say, let's take out the noise. Let's take out the verbiage that makes no sense. And let's talk about you and where you are right now and where do you want to go and how do we get you there?
Can't use it as a scapegoat anymore.
No.
Information is free and it's out there, and it is up to us to go and educate ourselves and become our best financial selves. So, do you think that money can buy happiness? And if so, how much would be enough for you to achieve that?
I don't think money can buy you happiness. I think it could buy you peace of mind. I think it could buy you a way to live a lifestyle that you wish and want for yourself. But ultimately, happiness at a certain point, no, I don't think money can buy you happiness.
So even after, 25 slingshots, you don't think?
You can only drive one slingshot at a time. You can only drive, you can only wear one pair of shoes at a time. At a certain point, it's not about having 30 pairs of shoes and 500 pairs of bags. I mean, you can only go out with one piece on you for one experience, right? For one lunch, for one meeting, for one day at work. So no, I don't think money can buy you happiness. I think that it can buy you peace of mind knowing that you can live your life the way you want because you have enough money in the bank to pay for the stuff that has to get paid. That, I think, is what money can do for you.
Absolutely. 100%. Bernie, what does being rich mean to you?
So being rich to me, you would think that having X dollars in the bank or in your investment account is what would be rich. That alone is not enough. You are rich when you have people that love you around you and in your life, where you know that you are safe within the home that you've created, whether it's a studio apartment or a 5-bedroom, 5-bath mansion, when you're safe in the environment that you live in, when you are using your time during the day doing something that gives you mostly pleasure. That to me is being rich. The money in the bank helps because it affords you to live the lifestyle that you want. But when we think of rich, we immediately think of money. And that to me alone is just not enough.
So you'd say it's more emotional than physical.
It's a combination of getting up in the morning and doing something that you mostly enjoy. Because let's face it, I don't care what business you own, I don't care what job you have. At the end of the day, hopefully, most of what you do gives you satisfaction,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then that income that you bring in allows you to live in a place that gives you comfort, gives you warmth in the winter and coolness in the summer. And then having people that you love and love you back in your life, that to me is rich. It's not the balance sheet. No, it's not the amount of dollars in the investment account.
Yeah. Spoken from a financial planner, I think that speaks volumes. So I think that's amazing. Well, Ronit, thank you so much for joining us today. And it's an honor to have you as my first ever guest on my podcast and many, many more to come.
Yay. Thank you. This was awesome. Absolutely awesome. Thank you.
Okay. This is good wine. I mean, I've never had Chardonnay before, but it's delicious. Cheers to the first episode